So, let's talk about something that feels very much in the realm of possibility these days. What would a war with Iran actually look like? Now, this isn't just guesswork. We're looking at a scenario built from serious expert analysis and wargaming. We're going to dive into what could happen in just the first 3 weeks, a period that could send massive shockwaves across the entire globe.
You know, for most of us, the first real sign of trouble wouldn't be some headline from a distant battlefield. Nope, it would be right here, staring you in the face at the gas pump. A national average of $3.92 a gallon. That's a 30% jump in just a few weeks. It's that immediate, wallet-punching reminder of just how connected our world truly is.
And that feeling of whiplash, of sudden shock, is exactly what we're here to get ahead of. This quote from a former ambassador just hits the nail on the head. When a crisis explodes, so many of us are left asking, wait, where did that come from? Well, the whole point of this explainer is to connect those dots before things get to that point, to give you a clearer picture of all the forces at play.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll look at the war on 2 fronts, then the critical battle for the Strait of Hormuz. After that, the global price of this conflict, the political fractures and shaky alliances, the actual path that could lead us to war, and, finally, the thing that keeps everyone up at night, the nuclear question. All right, first up, let's get an overview of the state of play.
Right from the get-go, you'd see these two completely different stories clashing. On one side, you have the U.S. reporting an incredible number of strikes, over 7,000, with the president claiming they're very close to getting what they want. But then you've got Iran hitting back at targets all over the region, with its new supreme leader on TV vowing that the whole American strategy is completely backfiring. You see, the information war would be every bit as intense as the real one.
Okay, so let's zoom in on the military front lines, and that means talking about the battle for Hormuz.
So if Iran blockades the strait, the U.S. response would be fast and it would be heavy. Sending another 2,200 Marines, that gives you serious boots-on-the-ground capability. And bringing in ships like the USS Boxer, which is basically a mini aircraft carrier, gives you overwhelming power from the sea and air. Now, you can bet the White House would be publicly denying any plans for a ground invasion, but behind the scenes, military planners would absolutely be weighing options like seizing a strategic spot like Iran's Kish Island to break the blockade. So even without an official announcement, all the chess pieces for a much bigger fight would be sliding into place.
Because this, right here, is the absolute heart of the problem. If Iran blocks the Strait of Hormuz, they can basically turn off the tap for nearly a fifth of the world's daily oil supply, just like that. That one move would trigger a massive global energy crisis and corner the U.S. in a really, really tough spot, both militarily and diplomatically.
Which brings us right to the economic shockwave, the global price of this conflict. And the impact at home would be impossible to ignore. A pre-war average of, say, under $3 a gallon, suddenly rocketing to nearly $4. It might not sound like a catastrophe, but that $1 increase, that would drain an estimated $575 million out of the U.S. economy. Every single day.
But the price of conflict is never just about the money, is it? You'd have oil prices soaring to $108 a barrel, big energy producers like Qatar losing billions in revenue. And then you have the human cost, the cost you can't put a number on. In just 3 weeks, this scenario estimates 13 American service members killed and over 200 injured. And for Iran, the civilian toll, according to monitoring groups, could be staggering, well over 1,300.
Okay, so beyond the battlefield and the economy, what about the political fallout? Let's dig into the fractures and alliances.
This is where it gets really, really tricky. Because according to intelligence testimony, even close allies like the U.S. and Israel would have very different main goals. For the United States, the ultimate worry is long-term, stopping Iran from getting a nuclear missile that can hit the U.S. mainland. But for Israel, the threat is right on their doorstep, right now. They need to eliminate Iran's current ballistic missiles, which can already get past their defenses. That difference in urgency, thinking about 10 years from now versus tomorrow morning, that's a classic source of major friction between allies.
And that friction would absolutely ignite a firestorm of debate back home. You'd start hearing arguments like this one from a former Trump counterterrorism official saying the U.S. was basically dragged into this war by Israel. It's a viewpoint that really hits home for a part of the president's base that's tired of foreign wars.
But you'd hear the other side just as loudly, just as forcefully. A former ambassador to Israel would fire back, calling that an unreasonable interpretation. Their point? Look, no matter who is whispering in the president's ear, at the end of the day, that decision rests on one person's shoulders, and the president of the United States made his own decision.
So you might be wondering, how could a decision like that even come about? Well, the path to a major war is almost never a straight line. As one expert put it, it's usually a scrambled mess of escalations, miscalculations, and missed opportunities.
If you trace the timeline leading to this hypothetical war, you can see that pattern play out. It might start a year earlier, with a short 12-day conflict that hurts Iran's nuclear program but doesn't solve the problem. Then, fast forward. Widespread protests erupt in Iran, and the U.S. publicly supports them. Iran brutally crushes the protests, and now the U.S. feels like it has to respond, so it starts a massive military buildup in the area. And here's the dangerous part. Once you have a force that big just sitting there, it creates its own kind of gravity. It becomes a hammer, and everything starts to look like a nail. By March, the big war kicks off.
And all of that brings us to our final and frankly most terrifying part of this whole equation, the nuclear question.
Now, analysts would most likely call this a war of choice. That's a very specific term, and it's really important. It means this isn't a war you were forced into by a sudden attack. It's a proactive decision, a choice to use military force to solve a problem. And that's a critical distinction because it means you are knowingly walking down a path that dramatically increases the risk of nuclear escalation.
And the risks would just skyrocket almost overnight. I mean, think about it. First, you're flying blind. International inspectors get less access, so nobody really knows for sure what's going on inside Iran's nuclear sites. Then, the channels for diplomacy start closing, making it harder and harder to de-escalate. And you're always one mistake away from disaster, one major strike on a civilian target. Whether it's an accident or on purpose, that could trigger a response that crosses that nuclear line. And this is all happening at a time when 5 of the world's 9 nuclear powers have already been in an active war in the last year alone.
It's a reality that is so stark that it prompted this absolutely chilling assessment from a former Nobel Peace Prize recipient, who said, "We are closer to nuclear war than we've ever been. The current policy is really nothing more than a hope for good luck."
And that leaves us with a final, deeply unsettling question that hangs over this entire scenario. As the military options get riskier, as the diplomatic doors slap shut, and as tensions ratchet up to unbearable levels, you're forced to wonder about a world where hoping for good luck just isn't enough. What happens when that luck finally runs out?